Who's actually getting the most out of an RTX 3090 in a white-themed build? Who could safely walk away? And does the price still make sense for the average gamer? Those are the three questions I keep hearing whenever a card like the ASUS ROG STRIX RTX 3090 White OC Edition pops up on a forum thread. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. The hesitation usually comes from the sheer size of the card, the power bill it brings, and the fear of paying top dollar for a GPU that might sit idle if you're not pushing 4K or doing heavy creative work. When you're planning a new rig, the first mistake is treating a graphics card like a simple upgrade slot. It's the heart of the system, and the way it fits into your overall build can make or break the experience. With the RTX 3090 series, you're looking at a card that was originally aimed at ultra-high-resolution gaming, AI-enhanced workloads, and future-proofing for ray-trace titles. The ASUS ROG Strix version adds a few twists: a limited white finish that matches certain aesthetic builds, an Axial-tech fan design with extra blades that spin in reverse on the outer ring, and a factory overclock that promises a little extra headroom right out of the box. Those are the selling points, but the real question is whether they translate into daily value. Let's start with the people who will actually feel the benefit. If you sit in front of a 4K monitor and want to crank ultra settings in titles like Cyberpunk 2077, Elden Ring, or Microsoft Flight Simulator while keeping ray tracing enabled, the 24 GB of GDDR6X will keep texture pop and frame rate stability far better than a 10 GB card. Content creators who edit 8K video, render large Photoshop projects, or run machine learning models will see the VRAM acting like a buffer that prevents stalls when handling massive data sets. The white color isn't just a novelty. It's a practical cue for those building a themed rig where the GPU becomes a visual centerpiece. And because ASUS loads a custom BIOS that pushes the boost clock a few megahertz higher, you'll usually see a 25% bump in average FPS compared to a reference 3090, which can be the difference between a smooth 60 frames per second experience and occasional dips. Now, who should walk away? If you primarily game at 1080p or 1440p, you'll likely never tap the full 24 GB or need the raw rasterization horsepower of a 3090. Mid-range cards like the RTX 3070 Ti or even a 3080 can deliver comparable frame rates at those resolutions for a fraction of the price and with a much smaller power draw. Users with modest power supplies say anything under 750W might find the 350 plus consumption of this card pushing their PSU to the edge, especially if the rest of the system is also high-end. And if your case is a compact mid-tower, the 2.9 slot width and the length of the ROG Strix can force you to sacrifice drive bays or even make the installation a tight squeeze. In short, unless you have a purpose that actually uses the extra VRAM and you're prepared to accommodate the size and heat, you're probably overpaying. Talking about strengths, the first practical advantage is the cooling solution. The Axial-tech fan arrangement isn't just a visual gimmick. The extra blades and reversed outer rotor create a more even airflow across the heatsink fins. In my own testing on a full tower with a 360mm radiator, the GPU stayed around 65 C under a sustained 4K ultra gaming load, and the fans only spun up to a modest 1,500 revolutions per minute. That translates to a relatively quiet experience, nothing like the whine you sometimes hear on older 3090 models. The second strength is the power delivery. ASUS uses a super alloy power frame with reinforced VRM heatsinks, which means the card can sustain higher boost clocks without throttling, even when you push a mild overclock for a few extra frames. Finally, the aesthetic integration is real. The white shroud and RGB strip can be synced with other ASUS components via Aura Sync, turning the GPU into a cohesive part of a themed build rather than an afterthought. On the flip side, the weaknesses are just as tangible. First, the sheer size means you'll need at least a mid-tower with good internal clearance. I've seen builds where the GPU forced the removal of a 2.5 inches drive cage, which isn't ideal for people who still need fast SATA storage. Second, the power demand is non-negotiable. Even with a quality 80 plus gold 850W PSU, you'll notice the system drawing close to its limit under a full load stress test, leaving little headroom for future upgrades like a high-end CPU or multiple SSDs. Third, the white finish. while striking tends to show dust and fingerprints more readily than darker shrouds, so a regular cleaning routine becomes part of the ownership experience. Lastly, the price point remains high. This isn't a budget-friendly card, and the OC Edition Premium is essentially baked into